White as snow, red as blood. Chapter 2. Snow, I'm going out to the forest. Do you want to come? Rose asked, putting on her snow boots and red cloak. Snow sat at a desk writing. She mumbled the sentence she was writing down and then told her sister, I'm coming. She set the quill down and grabbed her boots and cloak. Rose was already heading out the door, ready to be outside again. Snow, holding an herb book, ran to check on her sister. What are we looking for today? Snow asked. Rose tied her long black hair with a red ribbon, just some things that can only grow in winter. How does it feel to be 19? Hardly any different than 18, Snow replied. Rose laughed, I feel the same. I say we go check out the castle grounds tomorrow to celebrate. I have to deliver some herbs there anyway. So what you're saying is you want me to get out more? Snow White asked. Yep. I'll think about it. Truthfully, Snow hated going into town. She was far more comfortable at home but knew Rose loved it. For her sister, she would at least consider going out. However, there was another reason Snow neglected to go down the mountain. The girls continued on, searching for anything to take notes on. While finding a blooming plant, they heard someone yelling. They looked at each other and headed towards the crying sound. Soon, they found the source of the noise. It was a centaur with a long, bushy beard stuck on a tree's rough bark. The girls had met the centaur beforehand. 2 years ago, they found him tangled up in a fishing pole. They freed him then and advised him to cut his beard, but clearly, he ignored their advice as his facial hair held him captive again. Seeing the girls, he groaned, Not you bothersome girls. Yes, us again, here to save you from your own beard, Rose said, pulling out the knife she used to cut plant stems. As soon as she neared him, he screamed, No, not my beard. She sighed, It has to come off. If it doesn't, you'll be stuck there. She reached forward and cut his beard, only about 3 inches shorter than before. Once he was free, he turned to look at Rose. Anger was boiled inside him while Rose polished off her knife, paying him no heed. He stretched his arms out in her direction, wanting to crush her so severely that his veins popped. However, he took a breath and backed away. You're lucky I'm not fond of killing people without a good price on their head, he said to her, turning away from the girls, otherwise. He made a slicing motion at his neck and galloped off. Ungrateful jerk, Rose muttered with gritted teeth, getting just as enraged as the centaur was before. Snow patted her sister's shoulder. It's all right, Rose. You know how some people are. They don't want to depend on others, especially for something as embarrassing as that. Slowly, Rose put her knife back where it belonged, and then she said, Let's go home and celebrate our birthday. Back at their cottage, Snow baked them a cake and put candles on it. She put the cake on the table, and the 2 sisters sang themselves a birthday song. Together, they blew out the candles. It wasn't much of a party, and it only reminded the girls that their parents were gone. Being the more social one, Rose asked Snow White, So, do you want to go to the castle grounds tomorrow? I could really use some company. Snow White sighed, wishing her sister had forgotten about that. She answered truthfully, You know I don't like going, so maybe another time. Rose stood up abruptly. He isn't going to come, Snow. He isn't ever going to return. I know that's why you never come with me during the winter. I'm not even sure that bear was real. Just forget him, okay? Snow's shoulders sagged, but she still found it in her heart to forgive her sister. She hugged Rose, scratching her back like their mother used to do. I know that's how you feel, but I can't forget. And you know that's not the only reason. All right, then. You stay here, and I'll go. I'm leaving in the morning as soon as dawn breaks, Rose said, gently pushing Snow away. I'm off to bed. Good night, Snow chirped as her sister slammed her bedroom door. The sound made her cringe. She didn't like it when Rose got upset like that. It made Snow feel awful, but she just had a feeling about tomorrow. Something was going to happen. She didn't know if that meant the bear would return, but she felt she should stay while her sister went to the castle. Snow White's eyes went to the blazing fireplace. She stared at it for a long time, wondering what had happened to their fuzzy friend. Her eyes closed momentarily, then she put out the fire for the night. In the morning, Snow woke up extra early to catch her sister. She made Rose breakfast and some lunch to take with her on the road. When Rose Red finally got up, she snorted as she saw what her sister had done. Someone feels guilty, she said, rubbing her eyes. Snow smiled, her white cheeks turning a pretty pink. That's what sisters do. But we'll understand tonight why I mustn't go when you return. I've got a good feeling. What? That's what this is about. You have a good feeling? Wow, the things you make up to get out of socializing. I'm not trying to get out of it, Rose. I promise I'll go with you next time. I really do have a good feeling about today. Rose shook her head and sat at the table where her hot breakfast awaited. She ate it up as Snow packed the last few items into Rose's lunch for the trip. She even added some snacks in case Rose spent more time than planned at the castle. When everything was set, Rose took their only horse. It would be a long ride down the mountain, but she knew she would love every second, even if Snow wasn't with her. Meanwhile, Snow would patiently wait for her return. The second Rose entered the castle grounds, she headed for where the court herbalists assembled. Thankfully, she only had to pass a few guards because even though the herbalist building and gardens were on castle grounds, they weren't as heavily guarded as the castle itself with its moat and drawbridge. Everything beyond the moat was readily accessible to the public except during the late and early hours of the day. An additional benefit Rose had was being a familiar face, so guards rarely questioned what her business was. In fact, one young guard kindly escorted her to the herbalist building and even opened the door for her. She thanked him by name, nodding her head. He awkwardly closed the door without saying anything in return aside from a stutter of incoherent nonsense. Rose smiled, already aware of the guard's shy behavior around women. When she turned around, brushing snow off her cloak, she spotted the chief herbalist grinning like a cat behind his dark wooden counter. "Ah, here again, I see." And, as always, personally accompanied by a guard. "Are you sure you're not a princess, Miss Rose?" the chief herbalist teased as Rose lifted her bag strap over her head. Inside the well-loved bag were mountain herbs she and her sister collected. Despite his teasing, it was always a pleasure to see Chief Elijah. He was like a father figure to Rose, though he looked quite young for his age. Rose suspected it was because Elijah kept his face shaven and had long, thick hair that he pulled into a low ponytail. Most older men she knew were going bald and embraced gray facial hair. It made her wonder if her father would have lost his curly black hair if he was alive today. "Yes, I'm here again with a new batch. But no, I'm not secretly a princess." Elijah took the bag from her and said, "Go warm yourself by the fire, will you? Once I put these away, I need to talk to you about something." Rose happily obeyed his wish as she went to the blazing fireplace. She held her hands out, erasing the numbness. Rose was grateful that it wasn't freezing as it was in the mountains because, down in the kingdom, it took little time for the warmth to reach her bones. Then, from behind, someone rammed into her. She stumbled face first towards the fire, letting out a gasp. There was a shout as a hand wrapped around her waist, yanking her away from the hot flames. They fell back, causing her red hood to slip from her head. Now sitting in a stranger's lap, she stared at the wide hazel eyes above her. The eyes belonged to a handsome man with thick honey-brown hair. He looked just as mortified as she felt. Rose Red and the young man were lost as to what to do from there. Finally, he blinked and shook himself out of his daze. He stood, taking her shoulders to help her up as well. Once standing, he quickly let go of her and put a respectful distance between them. He rubbed the back of his neck bashfully. "Sorry about that. I wasn't paying attention when I walked in. How can I make it up to you?" Rose laughed, thinking it was amusing now that her life wasn't in danger. Her eyes crinkled as she waved a hand through the air. "It's fine if it was an honest mistake, so don't worry about it." When she met his eyes, he was awestruck. "You're remarkably forgiving and lovely," he said after a long pause. Rose rattled her brain for a response, but footsteps approached them. "Careful, Your Highness. If you start falling for Rose Red, it will break many young hearts," Elijah said with a grin as he returned to the room, having heard what the prince said. Rose turned pink when she realized she had been talking to Prince Richard. The prince also blushed, but because of Elijah's statement. Elijah merely smirked, having way too much fun teasing them. No, it isn't like that at all, Chief. I accidentally bumped into her, and she was kind enough to overlook my mistake," Richard explained, shaking his hands like Elijah accused him of murder. "Prince Richard, relax, I saw the whole thing." That didn't help as Richard felt more humiliated. "You what? So you heard what I said, too?" Elijah glanced at Rose Red, who had since overcome her shock. "He's a fun one, isn't he? At times, he is the most serious person I know, and then I catch him tripping over his own feet the next." "That sounds like my sister, Snow," she said with a smile. "Now, what did you want to tell me, Chief?" Before speaking, Elijah peeked carefully at Richard and said, "I was wondering if you would like to become an herbalist, along with your sister, of course. I thought it would be nice for the two of you to live here instead of on the mountain. Plus, Richard would like some more beautiful faces around here." Richard sighed as he slapped his forehead. "Why me?" Then, a thought popped into his mind as he grabbed Rose's shoulders. "Wait, you live up in the mountains?" Rose glanced at Elijah with concern, then slowly answered, "Yes." "Then, have you seen any strange creatures?" She thought about it. "Not really. I mean, there is a centaur we've run into a few times and a friendly bear "A bear?" he exclaimed, letting her go as he touched his chin. "Could it be?" "I bet it is, especially a friendly one, As he was caught up in thought, Rose turned to Elijah and said, "I think for now I'm going to have to pass until I can talk it over with my sister." "Thank you, though." Elijah nodded while placing some coins in her hands as payment for the herbs. "I'll always welcome the two of you here. Tell me as soon as possible if you can." Rose agreed. Before she left, she gave the still pondering prince a bow. He acknowledged her out of habit, not realizing that she was leaving because he was too focused on the new information he had. Right as she went back outside, though, he looked around, puzzled. "Wait? Did she leave?" he asked Elijah. "Yes, she bowed to you and everything just a second ago. Now, what's the reason you came all this way? You needed that tonic, right?" Richard gazed at the door leading outside. Yes, the tonic. Never can go without it each month." Elijah smirked and set the vial in front of Richard. Without looking, Richard popped it open and chugged the whole thing while his eyes were trained on the door. Once he wiped his mouth on his sleeves, he bid Elijah thanks before racing outside in the chill. Rose Red was easily spotted with her red cloak. He ran faster, yelling her name. She turned around and gave him a short bow while she held the reins to her large white horse. "Take me up on the mountain," he breathed. "Take me to the bear you spoke of. I need to see it." "I'm sorry, but I haven't seen the bear for years. He used to visit every winter, but he stopped coming. I don't know where the bear is." "That's fine, but it's still a lead. Please just help me out here," Rose read. Rose thought about it. Bringing Prince Richard to her cottage in the mountains to track down a bear? What would Snow White think? Then Rose remembered what her sister told her before she left, that something good would happen while she was away. This couldn't possibly be what she meant, could it? "All right, I'll take you there out of the goodness of my heart. But you promise not to kill the bear, right?" He laughed. "I promise I won't kill the bear, not ever." Rose petted the thick hair on her stallion. "Okay, I'm ready when you are." Richard got up on the horse, surprising Rose Red. She thought he would get his own horse, not hop on hers. Sure, nobles and commoners were often seen together after Queen Ella of Amishire, but it was still unusual to see them act so cordial as to ride on the same mount. What are you doing, Your Highness?" she asked politely. "Aren't you worried about what people will think?" He shook his head, not in the slightest. "Like Chief Elijah said, I'm a straightforward person for the most part. I don't joke around." To prove this, he extended his hand. Rose Red took it. With his help, she mounted the horse behind him, grateful she and her sister had often gone riding together, so she was accustomed to riding double. Then, the horse galloped at an even speed through the streets. Rose tentatively gripped Richard's dark green coat after she tugged her hood on so it covered her face. She didn't want any trouble, yet very rarely does trouble care. Queen Astrid watched her son leave in one of the castle's highest turrets. She hummed to herself as she wondered where Richard was off to before remembering she had an effortless way to figure that out for herself. She picked up a hand mirror she purchased from the remains of Effa and gazed into it. "Mirror, mirror, where is my son headed?" Queen Astrid asked the golden mirror. The glass fogged over her reflection, showing her Snow White and Rose Red's cottage. Then, it displayed the rest of the forest upon the mountains. Queen Astrid understood what this was about when the mirror focused on a bear trotting through white snow. "Nathaniel," she muttered, "so Richard found a trace of him." That's when the mirror showed her Rose Red. She looked down at the mirror. She traced her fingers along the edges of the glass. "Lips as red as blood, could this be?" Queen Astrid dismissed her thought. "No, it couldn't. That has been dealt with long ago."